Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right in today with a number that completely sets the stage for a pretty stark reality here in America. Back in 1971, a solid 61% of American adults were comfortably in the middle class. Today, that number has dropped to barely half. For decades, the middle class was literally the bedrock of the American dream, but right now, it is shrinking right before our eyes. And that brings us to exactly what we're looking at today: why the middle class is losing the wealth game. I am so passionate about breaking this down for you because the contrast here is absolutely staggering. While the middle class is visibly struggling just to keep up, wealth at the very top is surging. Just to put this into perspective, the total wealth held by the wealthiest Americans just hit an average of over $30 million per household. Which leads us to the ultimate question. Total U.S. household wealth recently topped an astronomical $175 trillion. Yes, trillion with a T. But if the middle class is shrinking and feeling more squeezed than ever, where did all that money actually go? Because almost none of it trickled down to the average earner. So let's break this mystery down and follow the money. Section 1, The Wealth Gap Reality, Uncovering the Numbers. To really understand the scope of this, we're going to look strictly at the hard data. The numbers don't lie, and they paint a picture that'll honestly probably stop you mid-scroll. The top 1% of Americans now hold roughly a third of all household wealth in this country. The top 10%, they control about 2/3 of it. But I really want you to think about the bottom half of America. That represents over 150 million people, and they hold just 2.5% of the wealth. I'm going to repeat that and just let it breathe for a second. Not 25%, 2.5%. 150 million people are splitting just 2.5% of the pie. Meanwhile, if we look right in the middle, the median American household has a net worth of around $192,000. Now, at first glance, that might sound okay, right? But the reality is, most of that number is an illusion. It's locked up in one specific thing: home equity. It's not liquid cash, it's not diverse investments, and most importantly, it's not financial freedom. You can't easily buy groceries or pay a sudden medical bill with the equity sitting in your roof. Part 2. The moving finish line, why it feels harder. If you've been feeling massive financial anxiety lately, even when you feel like you're doing everything exactly right, you are not crazy. We're going to explore exactly why the goalposts just keep shifting out of reach. $1 million has always been the ultimate benchmark of wealth, right? Well, nobody tells you that $1 million today buys you the exact same lifestyle that $165,000 bought your parents back in 1975. Let that sink in. The finish line for financial security hasn't just moved a few inches. It is completely sprinted away from the average earner. And the structural shifts are huge. Home prices alone are up nearly 50% since early 2020 alone. And for 2 straight decades, the massive expenses of life, healthcare, childcare, college tuition, they have completely outpaced wage growth. So even families who are playing by all the old rules, holding a steady job, carrying no bad debt, keeping decent savings, they're running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up. If you're feeling out of breath, it's a structural shift, not a personal failing. Number 3, 3 quiet wealth killers. Let's see how all this builds into the structural mechanics that are actually eroding wealth, right beneath the surface. There are 3 specific mechanisms secretly holding the middle class back while simultaneously accelerating the wealth of the top tier. They are the battle between income and assets, how we view debt, and the hidden mechanics of inflation. Okay, let's dive into this first killer: income versus assets. The middle class earns money through wages. You trade your time for a paycheck, and those wages get taxed incredibly hard. The wealthy, on the other hand, focus on owning things: stocks, real estate, businesses. They own assets that earn money for them, even while they sleep. And crucially, the capital gains produced by those assets are taxed at a much lower rate than your hard-earned wages. The second wealth killer is how we actually use debt. For everyday people, debt is marketed as a perfectly normal lifestyle choice. Credit cards, car loans, those buy now, pay later schemes, they're used to buy depreciating assets, basically things that lose value the second you take them home. But the wealthy, they view debt entirely differently. For them, debt is strictly a tool. It's leverage to acquire appreciating assets that'll grow in value over time and generate even more wealth. The third killer is the double-edged sword of inflation. Inflation quietly eats cash sitting in savings accounts. It acts as a silent, invisible tax every single day, shrinking the real purchasing power of your money. But on the flip side, inflation actively feeds the value of assets. When prices rise across the board, a stock portfolio or a rental property rises right along with them. Simply put, if your wealth isn't parked in assets, inflation is punishing you. Section 4. Why is this happening? So, we know the mechanics, but why is this widening gap happening in the first place? Let's take a totally impartial look at the root causes here. Now, to be completely fair, economists do not entirely agree on the primary cause. On one side, experts point to policy factors, tax structures that favor capital over labor, decades of wage stagnation, and severe housing supply restrictions. On the other side, experts point to individual choices, low personal savings rates, a lack of financial literacy, and poor consumer spending habits. The honest answer? It's probably a combination of both. But we aren't here to take a side today, because whether you blame systemic policy or individual choices, the undeniable effect is exactly the same. The gap is widening, and waiting around for the system to magically fix itself is just a bad strategy. Section 5. How to actually build wealth. We've looked at the grim reality of the problem, but now I want to empower you. Let's transition into actionable strategies that actually move the needle and can change your trajectory. The crucial point is implementing these 3 rules of wealth building. Number 1, shift your mindset from merely earning money to owning things that earn money. Even small, boring, consistent investing absolutely counts and compounds over time. Number 2, treat debt strictly as a tool to acquire assets, not as a subsidy to fund your lifestyle. And number 3, protect your savings from the quiet tax of inflation by investing rather than letting it all just sit idle in cash. Listen, none of this is a grand secret. In fact, it's pretty unsexy. But unsexy, boring, and consistent is exactly how real wealth is built, slowly and then all at once. I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The game is undoubtedly rigged in some ways. The numbers we looked at today prove that for sure. But are you going to let that stop you? Or will you learn the rules to play smarter within it? If this explainer opened your eyes even a little bit, make sure you stick around and subscribe, because in our next explainer, we're going to do a deep dive into exactly how the wealthy structure their money differently, going through it line by line. You definitely won't